Hey everyone, this is Music Tech Help Guy, and welcome to part 28 of my Logic Pro 11 Essentials course. In this video, I want to talk about using sends, buses, and auxiliary channels, also known as aux tracks for short, primarily to use these to mix with time-based effects like reverbs, delays, and other modulation effects. Now, typically things like EQ and compression, you can put these sort of things directly on the channel strip. And you can see in this song here, I've got a bunch of vocals here. It's basically a lead vocal and a bunch of backing harmonies and layers. I have EQ and compression applied to all of these. But when you get into the realm of time-based effects, like adding a reverb, generally speaking, you don't want to put a reverb plugin just on every single channel strip. There are some reasons why I'll explain in just a bit. But when using time-based effects, generally speaking, you're going to be using sends for this and placing them on an aux track or an auxiliary channel strip. So first, let's talk about the terminology: sends, buses, and auxiliary channels. So on each of your tracks in your mixer, you're going to see a send slot here, a send insert. And if you don't see sends, just right click or control click out here, go to channel strip components, and then make sure that sends are shown. A send is a way to route signal from one channel over to another channel. So to route signal from the lead vocal channel here over to an auxiliary channel. If I click on the send slot here, you'll see there's an option to route signal via a bus or using a physical mono or stereo output. So there are situations where you might want to route signal away from a channel to a physical output, using it for things like reamping guitars, maybe setting up a headphone mix, if you're using an external headphone amplifier or headphone monitoring system. But you'll also notice if I go to the outputs, I can also send outputs to buses, and inputs can even receive signal from buses. So if I were to create a send on this channel to, say, bus 1, that means that I'm routing signal from this channel through bus 1 over to another location. Well, where is that other location? When you create sends in the mixer in Logic, by default, it will automatically create an auxiliary channel strip in the mixer, and I'm just going to call these aux tracks from here on out. That's the more common way to refer to these. Now, what you might also want is this aux track to be closer to the channel that you're actually routing signal from. In Logic's mixer, at least at the time of making this video, you still cannot reorder channels in the mixer, but what you can do is right-click or control-click on an aux track and then select Create Track or use the shortcut Control-T. And what this will actually do is it creates an actual track in the tracks area for that aux track. So aux tracks by default do not show up in the tracks area unless you create a track for them. But now that the aux track is just below the lead vocal here, I can have it closer to the actual source that it's receiving signal from. So what I'm going to first do is mute everything in the mix here. And so we're just hearing signal from the lead vocal track and this aux track. You've got it all, but you can't break free. Just sleep right there. Now, you can see that I'm getting signal on the track itself, but we're not getting anything on the aux track. Why is that? Well, we are going from bus 1 here on the send to bus 1 on the input of the aux track, but this little knob here, this is the send level or the send amount. This controls how much signal are you sending from the track over to the aux track. So you can set this all the way down to -infinity, which is essentially off. You can pull this up to unity, which is 0.0. That's going to be 100% of the signal. And you can even go into the positive and add additional gain to this. And you can also hold Option and click on the send amount to set it to 100%. So let's check out the signal level now. You've got it all, but you can't break free. Just sleep right there in your frozen state. So right now we're hearing signal on both the lead vocal track plus the aux track. So a bus, at least in a DAW like Logic, is a digital pathway for audio signals to travel. Whereas on like an analog mixer or mixing console, this is going to be a physical bus wire or a path on a circuit board that allows an analog audio signal, a voltage, to pass from one location on the console over to another location on the console. So buses are all about routing signals from one place to another. You use sends to route these signals, and aux tracks, or auxiliary channel strips, are used to receive those signals. Before we kick things off, I need to tell you about our sponsor, Boombox. This platform is a one-stop shop for musicians, producers, and audio engineers. It combines file storage, collaboration tools, and networking features in a way that makes creating music and marketing your music even easier. With Boombox, you can securely store your tracks, stems, and even full DAW sessions. Collaborating is a breeze. You can invite others to join your projects and set up custom inboxes for clients to upload their files straight to your account. Plus, Boombox helps you connect with other artists by creating a personalized artist profile, share your music, look for collaborators, and curate playlists to showcase your work. And don't forget about Boombot AI, your creative assistant. Whether you need help with lyrics, generating MIDI ideas, or splitting stems, Boombot has your back. Visit boombox.io today to claim your 4 GB of free storage. So what you'll notice is the aux track pretty much has all of the same controls as a normal audio track, but you just can't record audio to it. You can't actually record anything to an aux track, but you can add effects to them. So what I'm going to do is add a reverb. I'm going to go down to reverb here, and let's try out Space Designer. We'll load that up in stereo. And let's choose a preset here. I'll just go to medium spaces. I'm a big fan of using plate reverbs on vocals. So let's try out this soft plate. Now, one thing you'll notice is that when you load Space Designer on an aux track, it automatically mutes the dry signal, but still has wet signal. So what that means is that the output of this plugin is only going to be reverb, not any of the dry signal. So the dry signal is going to come through the audio track, and only the wet signal is going to come through the aux track. This is one of the main benefits of using aux tracks, is it separates the dry signal from the wet signal. And there are other benefits to using sends as well that I'll get into in just a bit. So when I press play now, we're going to hear the dry vocal plus the added reverb.
You've got it all, but you can't break free. Just sleep right there in your frozen state.
Now, if I wanted to hear less of that reverb, I could pull down the level of the aux track in the mixer. That's one way to do it.
You've got it all, but you can't break free. Just sleep right there in your frozen state.
But what I usually do is I go to the send itself and I trim the level of the send to control how much signal is going from this track over to the aux track.
You've got it all, but you can't break free. Just sleep right there in your frozen state. You've broken down, but it won't break.
So this brings me to my next point about aux tracks and why I tend to use these for time-based effects. And that's because you can have one aux track with multiple other channels sharing that same effect. So it saves on processing power because you don't have to add this Space Designer plugin to every single vocal track in the mix. This song has 16 vocal tracks, so it would really be a pain to have 16 Space Designers loaded on each one of these channels. The other thing is, if you go back into the mix and try to make mix revisions, let's say you want a little bit less reverb overall, you're going to have to go into every single Space Designer plugin and pull down the wet signal and balance that with the dry signal. And you'll have to do that for every single one of these channels. Whereas if I want to instantly add this same reverb to all of my backing vocals, I can just select all of those backing vocal channels and I can route them to bus 1 as well. And then I can pull up their send amounts just like so. And so now all of my vocals are going to the same aux track with that reverb effect loaded onto it.
Never gonna let you fall. I'm never gonna let you fade away. I'm never gonna let you fall. I'm never gonna let you fade.
Maybe we want a little bit more reverb on the backing vocals than we do the lead vocals. So I can pull those up higher than the level for the lead vocal.
I'm never gonna let you fall. I'm never gonna let you fade. Don't tell me that you're faithless. Tell me that you feel less. I told you that we're running out of time. You know we've gotta grow up, create the seeds and sow them.
And again, this isolates the dry signal on all of these vocal tracks from the wet signal. I can solo just my reverb aux track and only hear the reverb. I can mute it to hear no reverb. And if a mix client comes back to me and says, you know what, I like the mix, but can you just bring the reverb on all of the vocal tracks down a bit? Now all I would have to do is just pull down the fader on that one aux track rather than having to go into every single instance of Space Designer directly on the channel strip. Now, there are many situations where you are still going to use time-based effects directly on a channel, especially if it's an effect that's only going to be used on one channel. There's really no reason to use a send in that situation. And a lot of times when I'm working with synthesizers and keyboards and other instruments, I will add reverb directly to that instrument because the reverb is sort of part of the sound design of the instrument. And so I'm okay with, using it that way. Now, it's completely up to you how you mix, but this is the way I do it. Now, another way to create an aux track is you go up to Options, and then you can select Create New Auxiliary Channel Strip or press Control N. That will create a new aux track here. You can see right now this is set to input 1 and 2, and you can see my microphone coming through the channel there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to no input for now. I'm going to make a track out of this, and this is going to go up by the vocal tracks. And I'm going to use this as like a modulation effect, like a thickening effect. The effect that I like to use for this is under modulation, and this is called the ensemble effect. Essentially what this does is it breaks up the signal into multiple different voices. You can add spread to them. It detunes them with 3 different LFOs. One is just a random LFO. The other 2 are more of like something that looks kind of like a sine wave. And it adds a bit of like a chorus effect. So how do I route the signal over to this new aux track? Well, I need to choose a bus first. So I'll go up here to the input and I'll choose bus 2. And then I will make the lead vocal go to bus 2. I'll option click on that. And then I'll make all of the backing vocals also go to bus 2. Option click on those. Let's maybe bring that down in the mix a little bit there and even further down in the mix on the lead vocal. And let's hear what this sounds like with the modulation effect.
Just take it slow. Give it time. What's another year, another life?
I'm a big fan of just like soloing the effects so I can get an idea of, what I'm actually adding to the signal. If you want to choose a different preset, you could do that up here. I'm going to go with the backing group preset, pull the number of voices up, pull out the stereo spread a little bit.
Never gonna let you fall. Hey. I'm never gonna let you fall. I'm never gonna let you fade. Even if we lose it all, it's just more time to waste. Just take it slow. Give it time. What's another year, another life?
And then you may find you want to trim the modulation a bit, maybe pull it up, pull it down. Do whatever sounds best in your specific situation. Another effect that I like to use sends for are delays. And you might think of a delay as like a long delay effect, and you can certainly use it for that. But what I'm going to do here for vocals is I'm going to create a short slap delay that, in addition to the modulation effect, the ensemble, it's going to help thicken the sound of the vocals. So once again, I'm going to create another send. Let's go to bus 3. I'll do the same thing over here. And again, when you create sends this way, it will automatically create an aux track for you. You just have to create a track out of it to move it up to the top of the list here. You can see it's right there. So let's pull this up with my other time-based effects. And I'm going to call this slap. And the effect I'm going to use for this is under delay, and there's 5 different delays you can choose from. I'm going to use the tape delay because this is like a mono delay. And I'm going to start off with the 16th note slap preset.
Tell me now under the setting sun, 'cause when you finally wake up, I'll be gone.
So that's a lot of that slap effect. So let's maybe dial that back a little bit. So I'll pull down bus 3. I'll pull it down here as well in the lead.
Just take it slow. Give it time.
I like to use the diffuse tape head. I also like to add a little spread to it, and you can play with the filter that's applied to the delay as well. And then another thing you can do is if you don't want the delay effect to be synchronized to the tempo of the song, you can turn off tempo sync. And I'm going to roll this down to something even shorter, just a really, really short slap delay effect.
What's another year, another life? Tell me now under the setting sun. Don't tell me that you're faithless. Tell me that you feel less. I told you that we're running out of time. You know we've gotta grow up, create the seeds and sow them. I told you that we're running out of time.
I realize we haven't even listened to the song with the instruments in, so I'll go ahead and unmute my instrumental tracks and let's give that a listen. I'll start here at the first verse, and then we'll just listen all the way through the chorus.
You've got it all, but you can't break free. Just sleep right there in your frozen state. You've broken down, but it won't break me. I'm here for you. I feel for you, darling. When we tear down all these walls, just stay right here by my side. I'm never gonna let you fall. I'm never gonna let you fade away. I'm never gonna let you fall. I'm never gonna let you fade. Even if we lose it all, it's just more time to waste. Just take it slow. Give it time. What's another year, another life? Tell me now under the setting sun, 'cause when you finally wake up, I'll be gone. Don't tell me that you're faithless. Tell me that you feel less. I told you that we're running out of time. You know we've gotta grow up, create the seeds and sow them. I told you that we're running out of time.
Yeah, and there we go. We've added 3 different time-based effects to all of the vocals. And again, if at some point a client comes back and says, you know what, I really don't like that modulation effect. I don't like the ensemble effect in Logic. Maybe let's use a different plugin. You can very easily swap out that one plugin and the effect will change on all of the other tracks that are routing signal to that aux track. You know, for example, maybe I want to use a third-party effect. One of my favorite modulation effects for vocals is the Howard Benson Vocal Multiplier from Joey Sturgis Tones. It's got a stereo width and a voice generator. You can make the tone brighter or lower. You can add a low octave. You can add modulation to it, amongst a bunch of other effects as well.
We're running out of time.
Let's back that up.
Just take it slow. Give it time. What's another year, another life? Tell me now under the setting sun, 'cause when you finally wake up, I'll be gone. Don't tell me that you're faithless.
And again, if I wanted to swap out the reverb, if I wanted to swap out the tape delay, it makes it super easy to do that when you use sends as opposed to putting these effects directly on the channel strips. Now, one last thing I want to wrap up this video with is I want to talk about the difference between post-pan, post-fader, and pre-fader sends. These are 3 different send modes that determine where the send is placed in the signal flow of the channel. So one thing you may recall from a previous video when we were talking about panning is that the way the signal flow of the channels in Logic works is the volume fader actually comes before the pan knob. That's the way this works when you're using post-pan mode. That means that the send is coming after the fader and after the pan. So this has some effects on how the signal is sent over to the aux tracks. In fact, just to demonstrate this, I'm going to mute the lead vocal and bypass those sends. And if I pull up or pull down the level of any one of these tracks, it's going to affect the level of the sends going over to those aux tracks.
Don't tell me that you're faithless. Tell me that you're fearless. I told you that we're running out of time.
And you'll also notice, because this channel is hard panned over to the left, at least in the reverb and slap delay tracks, we're only getting reverb and slap delay on the left side of the mix. Now, that very well may be the way you want to do it, but typically I want my sends to be independent of the pans. And so what I can do instead is I can swap these over to post fader, which means that the send still comes after the fader, but it comes before the pan.
Don't tell me that you're faithless.
So bus 1 was our reverb, and you can see now on the reverb channel, the reverb's pretty much right in the center.
Don't tell me that you're faithless.
But the slap is still on the left because that's still in post-pan mode. So let's try doing that on all of the reverbs. Let's make these all post-fader, and then we'll do that for all of the slaps as well. And you'll notice that the send amount turns blue instead of green.
Don't tell me that you're faithless. Tell me that you're fearless. I told you that we're running out of time. You know we've gotta grow up.
It's two different sounds. You'll have to decide for yourself whether you prefer your reverbs and your other time-based effects to be panned along with their original tracks, or whether you prefer them to be, in the center. Now, another option here that you may find useful is pre-fader. So with pre-fader, this puts the send before the fader and before the pan knob. So in pre-fader mode, the level of the track is going to have zero effect on the amount of signal that's sent over to the aux tracks. So here I just have bus 1 active, and you'll also notice that in pre-fader mode, the send amount turns blue and moves over to the left side. And so let's go ahead and play these, and I'm going to move the faders up and down, and you'll see that the reverb stays the same regardless of what the track levels are set to.
Don't tell me that you're faithless. Tell me that you're fearless. I told you that we're running out of time. You know we've got to grow up, create the seeds and sow them.
And again, if we were working in post-fader or post-pan mode, those levels would affect the reverb level.
Don't tell me that you're fearless. I told you that we're running out of time.
In mixing, I find pre-fader sends useful when there are certain tracks where maybe you want to hear more of the wet signal than you do the dry signal, which is not always the way, I end up using it. So maybe on just certain tracks here, maybe just like these ones right here at the end, it's just sort of like a tagline there. Let's say just on these tracks, I want my reverb to be pre-fader, and maybe I also want the modulation to be pre-fader on these. Let's go ahead and turn on all of those buses, all those sends. I'll do it over here as well. So now when I pull down the level of these, I'm still going to be getting the same amount of signal going over. In fact, let's do this for the delay as well. Let's make these all pre-fader. So for these channels, I can set the level to anything, and we're still going to get the same amount going over to the aux tracks.
Running out of time.
Yeah, it looks like the mod effect is a little hot there. Let's pull that down.
Running out of time.
So if you just want to hear more of the effect and less of the dry signal, you can back these way off in the mix, but use pre-fader sends to still get a healthy effect over there. So let's hear what that sounds like with all the vocals in.
That we're running out of time.
Maybe a little less reverb on those.
That we're running out of time.
Yeah, maybe a little less delay. We're getting more of the modulation effect.
That we're running out of time.
And then let's hear what that all sounds like in the mix with the lead vocal back in as well.
Gone. Don't tell me that you're faithless. Tell me that you feel less. I told you that we're running out of time. You know we've gotta grow up, create the seeds and sow them. I told you that we're running out of time. We're running out of time.
And there you go. So those are sends, buses, and aux tracks for use with time-based effects in Logic Pro. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.